Shabbat.
You are live.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. All right, guys, you're welcome to join us. Okay. Eli Nishmas for his father. We're learning Eretz Hashem. Okay, Baruch Hashem, good to see everybody. We're all back. We're one of the earliest, I guess, Bati Medrash to begin this man. All yeshivas only begin, and kollels only begin Rosh Chodesh Iyar. So we are one step ahead of the game. Baruch Hashem. Okay, so we're going to discuss a little bit in the beginning of this year about Pesach aftermath. Baruch Hashem, we've all survived Pesach, and God willing, it's in the best way possible. We got in our very special spiritual Pesach diet, avoiding chametz and chametz derivatives for a full 7, maybe 8 days. Everybody here did 8 also. Anybody sneak some chametz in on Shabbos? Okay, 7/8 days. And kidneys doesn't count. Even the Arizal states that, right, when we get our Pesach diet in well, and we don't consume even a mashru of chametz, so it refines our bodies, our souls, to the point that we are able to not sin inadvertently during the year, meaning that we don't have anymore as much of intuition towards sinful behavior. So, and of course, when we don't sin, we live better lives, we're healthier, we're happier, and everything gets, that's the blessing that we should all get after Pesach. Okay, that was the spiritual summary of the Pesach holiday. Okay, yeah.
When we sold products, we weren't selling them?
No, we don't sell kidneys. Kidneys does not have to be sold, and it is not sold. Okay, so we're going to do a few, before we start, our main discussion tonight is, of course, the mitzvah Sefiras Ha-Omer, as was published as the topic. We're going to first go through a few after Pesach subjects that are relevant, and we'll begin with consuming chametz after Pesach. So even though Pesach is over, and you may continue your consumption of chametz goods, nonetheless, as we know that it is possible to have a hekesh, a continuation of the prohibition of chametz even after Pesach. Now, how is that possible? If a Jew owned the chametz over Pesach, then that chametz continues to be rabbinically forbidden in consumption and benefit forever. So, practically what this means, as we publicized in Daily Halachav yesterday, that when you're going to a store to shop, especially in the days after Pesach, but even as far as Shavuos, and sometimes even as far as the whole year, if we're discussing alcoholic beverages, which a store may have in stock for quite a while. Depends on how well his business does, but he can have it in store for maybe even a few years. So you have to check that he has a mechiras chametz sign, that he has sold his chametz in a valid method to a guy, in order so we avoid this prohibition of consuming chametz that over Lav Pesach. So Baruch Hashem, most stores, especially in religious neighborhoods, have fulfilled this basic condition for us to be able to continue purchasing by them for business-related reasons. They go ahead and do so, aside from the fact that many are from themselves, many of the store owners, and therefore they have to. But this doesn't mean that just because there's a mechiras chametz sign that everything's fine and everything's good.
I'll give you a practical example. Yesterday we were by in Yerushalayim, near Takna Merkazi, and city market, by the cinema center, had a sign on there outside of the door. And I said, great, I'm going to bought crackers and cheese to have for dinner way back from Yerushalayim yesterday. And somebody pointed out to me, did you look at the sign carefully? What's the date on the sign? And you saw it was Ayin Ches, and they had written over the Ches a Tes.
Mm-hmm. So either it was a fraud, or they the Rabbanut didn't have enough time to send them a new piece of paper.
Another store further down the block had the proper Ayin Tes on it.
Right. Oh, okay, could be, but anyways, so even if a store does have a sign, there are many Yidden who are particular not to purchase any chametz after Pesach. Some extend the stringency till the time of Shavuos, unless it was produced, meaning that the flour was ground, meaning the grain was ground into flour and baked after Pesach, in which case you're pretty much 99% certain that it wasn't chametz and owned by a Jew over Pesach. And the reason for this is for a few reasons. Number one, some people don't like relying on the sale. They say the sale is a trick. Maybe it's not so valid. There are some such an approach in Poskim that the Mechiras Chametz sale is not as clear cut as we make it seem. The Alte Rebbe does not hold to that position. The Chabad approach is, as is the custom of the world, is to rely on it completely 100%. But some abide by the stringency, especially those who follow the Gra in all of their ways, to not rely on the sale. So therefore, if you can't rely on the sale, the chametz really was owned by a Jew, because it wasn't sold. And if it was owned by a Jew, then you can't eat it. So that's their stringency. So they want to make sure not to consume any chametz that was owned by a Jew over Pesach until you know for certain that it's a new shipment that came in. However, there's also another reason why, even for us who we do rely on the sale, that there's a reason to be stringent, and that is because the way it works in the supermarkets is that not always do they purchase directly from the manufacturers. For example, Osem or Angel, let's say Osem, huge, one of the biggest food companies here in Israel. So they don't deal directly with the small businesses. They have distributors. They sell to the distributors, and the distributor sell to stores. Now, if that's the case, just because a store has a sign that he sold his chametz for Pesach doesn't mean that the chametz you have was owned by that store over Pesach and wasn't purchased from a distributor after Pesach, and that distributor never sold his chametz. If there was a system that stores had a Rav that was mashkiach and gave a stamp, a certification, that he supervised that this store claims that they do not purchase from any distributors, they only purchase from people who have sold their chametz over Pesach, then we're fine. But as of now, I don't know of any store who does so, and I don't know of any store who has such a hashgach. So therefore, that is another reason to be stringent. Now, do you have to be stringent? Can you not rely on the mechiras chametz? So this is a debate in a case that there's a question. Practically, many people are lenient in this, not to suspect that it was purchased from a middleman, but I'm just explaining that these are all reasons behind a reason to be stringent. In which case, do you not have to be stringent? If it says on the package that it was ground and baked after Pesach of this year, then you obviously don't have any worry. Another way out of the issue is you can look at the date. If the date on every food product has a code. Now, it doesn't say the actual date. You have to translate the code into the month. So if you look up what it corresponds to, and you see which month it was manufactured in, so if it was manufactured after Pesach, you can purchase any store you want. Doesn't have, even a store that didn't sell chametz. It was owned by a Jew. So these are all ways that you can avoid the issue. And bottom line, according to this, if you have pretzels that say on it they were baked after Pesach, and pretzels that were baked before Pesach, it's better to get the ones after Pesach, because those are, first of all, the fresher probably, and second of all, they avoid all the issues that we just enumerated. Last year we discussed, as was a major controversy in the tri-state area regarding the beer situation. And so Baruch Hashem this year, so I'll just give a little background, and this year as well, Baruch Hashem, they were able to facilitate a sale. Last year it was discovered that the largest beer distributing company in the United States, called Manhattan Beer Distributors, was owned by a Jew. And 90% of the beer in the tri-state area is supplied by them, which basically means that since 1979, when this individual, Mr. Berkman, took ownership of this company, Jews have been drinking beer that was owned by a Jew over Pesach. Lack of knowledge, they didn't know, and they didn't have to know, they didn't have to suspect of such a thing, but now they do, now they know. So now that they know, this entered a huge problem. What are all the Shalom Zachars going to do, and what are all the beer drinkers going to do? You have to fly to go to drink beer, you know? So last year, the OK arranged and facilitated with, in a miraculous manner, a sale with this individual. And he went through with the sale. The only problem is that this is a general question. It's not just in this case, but in any case, what do we do with businesses? A business that sells chametz, And we would like to continue purchasing their chametz after Pesach, and the business is owned or partially owned by a Jew. And there's many in the States, there's many cases like that, there's many supermarkets. Now here in Israel, it's not such a problem because there's a law, you can't sell chametz. So it's not such a big deal for people to just, you anyways can't sell the chametz, so just sell it. And then all the religious can also purchase your product. So it makes complete business sense for all Israel marketers to sell their chametz, and most of them do. However, in the States, there's no such law that you can't sell chametz on Pesach. So they want to continue making money. So what are you going to tell the guy? Do mechiras chametz, we won't lose anything, but how can I continue leaving my business open and selling chametz and making money if I sold it to the guy? So this is what the Poskim discussed, and it's a major, major debate if such a sale is valid. Some Poskim said it's invalid, and some Poskim said it is. That was the position of Moshe Feinstein and other Poskim from previous generations as well. It's a major debate from previous generations till today. It's mutter. He held it's mutter. It's a mutter sale. It's a valid sale. The fact that they're selling chametz is another issue, but the sale itself remains valid. But this is under debate. So this was always a problem. And what do you do with supermarkets? You know, if you have partial Jewish ownership of the supermarket, without going into the question of stock ownership, but if you have real practical ownership in a company by a Jew, what do? So even if you do go ahead and manage to arrange the sale for them, nonetheless, you still have the issue, but they're not closing their stores on Pesach. They are not closing, period. They're not. Okay, it's not happening. So what do? So some will not shop after Pesach. This is already for tens of years in any major supermarket, that is partially owned by a Jew or owned by a Jew, okay, because of this issue. Others, however, rely on the mechiras chametz. As we said before, it's a machlek. So this same debate applies likewise regarding the beer. Is this sale valid, as they did continue supplying their 90% beer to the tri-state area, even during Pesach? So you have some people in New York who will no longer drink beer till Shavuos time, and some people who will continue to drink beer even before Shavuos. So this is the remaining debate. Interestingly,
drink beer that is then produced after?
Oh, if you know for certain it was produced after, we have no problem. But as I understand, there isn't a way of telling when it was manufactured. I could be wrong, but that's what I understood. In any event, interestingly, the OU, which is known for its very lax and open approach towards kashrut supervision, regarding this takes a very extreme approach and is actually very stringent. And because of this, they lose a lot of business. They hold of the stringent approach. That's the psak they received from Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, that you cannot give a valid mechiras chametz sale to a company that continues to do business, a Jewish-owned company that continues to do business over Pesach. And therefore, they hold. They don't tell people the beer is treif, but they say that we can't tell you it's okay. The OK can tell you it's okay because they hold it, but the OU can't tell you it's okay. The OK is the one who facilitated the sale, right?
So
this year,
restaurants that have an OU on them can't serve this beer.
Correct. Restaurants that have an OU need to also supervise that they, well, not just this, but they can't receive from any Jewish-owned company that kept their business open on Pesach. And because of this, the OU, I heard this last year from Rabbi Elephant, I think the CEO of the Hashgacha, or maybe of the whole OU, that one of the first things that they have on their questionnaire towards companies looking to receive the Hashgacha, the OU, is do you have Jewish ownership? And so a lot of people get very offended, like, why do you care? Says that the truth is, if you have Jewish ownership, it's much worse for you. So don't try lying, don't try playing games here. If you have Jewish ownership, it's much. Why? Because they basically said that if you're a company who sells chametz, and you mark that you are a Jewish owner, that you have Jewish ownership, we can't give hashgacha to you the whole year, because there's no such thing as you give an OU hashgacha for 7 days of Pesach. It's like, all those products manufactured, we can't have to take off. It's a balagan. So they literally cannot give hashgacha, and they don't give hashgacha to any Jewish-owned company or partially Jewish-owned company that produces chametz ever the whole year.
That is open to Pesach.
Unless it's a firm guy, he's going to close his business. Someone who's selling to the firm market, that's his business, so he'll close his business. So they'll give hashgacha. Anyone who's not going to agree to close his business for 8 days, he's going to lose out. Okay, so that was that discussion. Baruch Hashem, this year as well, they were able to facilitate it. So the beer in the tri-state area as of now is good, based on what we discussed.
He's also giving away free beer now for all the children.
Who?
Bergman.
Oh yeah.
That's according to the people holding the okay over there.
It's not just okay. It's most Rabbanim. Most Rabbanim take the lenient approach. As far as I know, most Rabbanim take a lenient approach. It's not just specifically the okay, but it is a valid halachic debate. Some siding this way, some siding the other way.
But OU is not. No, OU wouldn't tell you to go do it.
The OU says ask your Rav, but as a policy, they can't say it's good. They can't say it's okay for you to drink. It's policy, because that opposes their psak that they received. Okay, so let's move on to another halacha that applies after Pesach. Pirkei Avos, we should have began saying this past Shabbos here in Eretz Yisrael. In any event, those who did and those who didn't, we restart saying Perek Aleph this Shabbos. That is practically the custom because we want to be in line with Chutz La'aretz, even though that idea of being in line with Chutz La'aretz doesn't really have such a good source. We do our thing, they do their thing. Our parshias aren't the same. We didn't not have a parsha this Shabbos. But nonetheless, this was practically done. So this Shabbos we will be beginning or re-beginning Perek Aleph Pirkei Avos. The reason why we say it is in preparation of Matan Torah and as protection from the summer months. The summer months, the sun is out, brings with it, as it says, many marin bishin, many spiritual challenges. And therefore we study the works of our ethics of our fathers to give us some good and healthy vaccinations against evil. Parshias. So because of this switch of Parshias, that here in Eretz Yisrael we had an extra Shabbos that they didn't have, so we are now one Parsha ahead. Now that's not a problem. It's only a problem if you travel. If you're traveling from here to the U.S., so you get to hear a Parsha again. It's no harm done. When you come back, it's a problem. Anyone traveling from the U.S. to here, or anywhere else in the world to here, not just the U.S., right? Anywhere in the diaspora to Eretz Yisrael, so they will be missing a Parsha, and they have two options: either to miss the Parsha, they missed it, or to try to arrange it with the minyan that by Rishon, the Balkari will begin from the previous Parsha and read the entire thing until the end of Sheni. If he agrees to such a thing and the congregation has the patience to sit there.
So you're going to read two Parshas.
Not now.
No?
Not now. In a long time. You have some time. We don't. They're not rushing to catch up.
No, now.
Eventually we will catch up. When? This Shabbos we're not catching up.
Did you only have one Parsha?
Only
You don't have to go?
Only Achremes. Kadeshim is next week. They'll catch up eventually, don't worry. No need to fear. But it's going to take some time. Be patient. Right. Because there's certain Seder, it's not so simple. I did research in the past on the whole ideas of who set up the schedule of the parashas. And it's very obscure, the material. And so it's really not so simple, and no one has a very definitive answer to this question. But that is the minhag. That's the minhag that's done. Okay, any other after Pesach discussions? Yes, we forgot. Maridato. Mashallah, Maridato, the same bracha. So as we know that we began changing this already from Musaf of Pesach, first day of Pesach. And a quick reminder, it's common that a person will accidentally say the Saint Talmud to Luvracha, Mashma from the Geshem, and then he catches himself. So, if you caught yourself after you finish the bracha, you have to go back. If you caught yourself after you finish Manas, you have to repeat Manas. If you're in doubt, you also have to repeat Manas till 90 days pass. Till 90 tefillas, 30 days, correction. 90 tefillas, which is 30 days. You have to wait till 30 days pass, which is 90 tefillas, Shachas and Chamayim. And so after 30 days, then it's no longer a problem. So basically, when it reaches Tes Vav Iyar, then we're out of that suffix zone. That's why sometimes the mind plays tricks on us, and we really did say it, but by the time we moved on to the next bracha, we no longer remember that we said it. and then where you enter into the suffix. So the best thing is to try to say it, like emphasize it, or say it a little bit louder, so you remember that you did say, not enter yourself into these Sefiras, into these doubts. Now, in a case that a person remembered right away, the halacha is he must return to the beginning of the bracha nonetheless. It doesn't help to fix himself right away. Oops, no. Go back to Mechalkel Chaim. Go back to the beginning. Alte. Go back to the beginning of the bracha. You have to fix yourself from the beginning of the bracha because you mentioned a curse in the blessing. It's a curse. To ask for rain after Pesach is a curse. And someone who curses in the middle of davening, he has to go back to the beginning of at least that blessing. It doesn't help to curse and then say a good word. You have to remake up that entire bracha. That applies like by Masha B'Ruach also applies. If you said Masha B'Ruach Maridatah, that's fine. Many people do that lechatchila. It's only if you said Masha B'Ruach Maridageshem. That's when you have to go back and repeat. But Masha B'Ruach Maridatah, there's no problem. You said that there's going to be wind. Okay, so there'll be wind. Same Talmud, same idea. A person who said that doesn't help to quickly correct, say the same bracha. He has to go back to the beginning of Baruch Aleinu and repeat it with the correct nusach from there. Okay, I believe that's all of our Pesach aftermath questions. Any questions?
One question about the night of the Jewish Pesach. We had a discussion about when we can start to say Kriya Shema of the day.
Kriya Shema,
so there are different opinions.
Kriya Shema of Shachris is, as it says, you can only start Lechatchila. Okay, Lechatchila, you can only start saying it from Mishayakir. Mishayakir is a general time. That's for Talis, for Tefillin, and for Kriya Shema. That is approximately 60 minutes on the clock before sunrise.
60 minutes on the clock.
There's different opinions, but that's better. 60 minutes.
Opinion that said that you for Kriya Shema itself, not only Tefillin, that you have to wait about 15 minutes before the sun rises. 15
minutes before the sun rises? No. Okay. There is such a thing that lechatchila mitzvah namuvchur is to daven nates.
Yeah.
Nates means is that you finish Kriya Shema with sunrise and then you daven Shemoneh Esrei right away with sunrise. Okay, so that's the best of the best. You're looking for the super best of the best. You're right, but it says in that same seif that today we're no longer Bucky expert to be able to do this. And therefore, we just daven any time. We're not medactic so much that it's exactly before. But nonetheless, Mishayakir is the time, and the Diavad even Aleisa Shachar is the time. So if you're already up to Aleisa Shachar, there's nothing to lose by saying Kriya Shema now. And Mirz Hashem, you wake up before the Zman, you say it again. If you don't, you at least have your backup insurance. Okay. You have your insurance policy that you said it before, after Aleisa. Depending on which opinion of Aleisa, but you still, whatever, even as the earliest Aleisa, you still have your insurance policy. So it's limited liability, but it's still something better than nothing, right?
But best to do
the Chatchila is best to do from Mishayakir until 3 hours after sunrise. Yeah, what was your question?
No.
That was the question. Okay. Okay. The mitzvah.
Is there any kind of skula to eat matzah after Pesach or Shabbos? One of the seudas of Shabbos after Pesach.
I am not aware of such a thing. There is a skula to reminds us of another halacha. We do the key challah for anyone who didn't do it this Shabbos for some obvious reasons. Then we have to do it. Then we do it this Shabbos for those who do so. The key challah minhag. But it will be kind of hard to stick a key in the matzahs.
Because
I haven't heard of such a custom.
I saw some sitting in Sunday, Sudash Kishit, Shudis Matzah, specifically Matzah.
What is correct is that there are many Hasidic groups that are machmir not to eat any chametz till Shavuos, as I said before. They don't eat chametz till Shavuos. Never.
Never.
Yeah, really? Never. So someone who only comes to shul for Shal Shudas thinks they have a minhag on Shal Shudas to eat matzah. No, they have a minhag the entire time, from Tesvav Nisan until Shavuos not to eat chametz.
Even if they make it.
Amshanav doesn't eat chametz till Shavuos. They have a very long Pesach diet.
Matzah shmura or?
No, Matzah Mechona.
No, they have matzah mechona, but they won't eat chametz.
Matzah shmura or matzah?
Am
Not
Shalom
necessarily.
Rebbe or Am Shalom Hasidim?
Chassidic. Am Shalom. Chassidic group called Am Shalom. I can't guarantee you every person follows this, but from what I saw from Am Shalom Chassidim, it's enough to do. Okay, the mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer, so we had just counted. We're going to go through a summary of different pointers and halachis of Sefiras Ha-Omer. We will also get to the mourning customs in Minhagi Avelos. So we'll just give a little preface or introduction. The mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer, as we know, was a continuation, in essence, of the holiday of Pesach. Pesach is explained in Kabbalah and Hasidus as the holiday of Ratzi, where we had a shooting, a divine experience, meaning a very sublime, divine initiated experience that it was aroused from God. And now it's time to settle it down into the heart, right? And even physically, we went on this very high spiritual diet. Now we're off the diet. We have to now try to settle those ideas and those refinements of character into the rest of the year. So that's the purpose of Sefiras Ha-Omer. And by a Jew actually just simply saying the words Hayim, right, Achadas Hayim, etc., each day of the Omer, that affects a refinement of his animal soul. Now, even though most people say talk is cheap, and it is, because you can talk pretty much as what do you want, you can say a lot of stupid things, and nothing happens, but that's from our peripheral vision. And truth, especially a Jew speech, has tremendous power. If you remember, we learned 2 months ago that a Jew, when he speaks in the bathroom, gives koiches to the klippus. A Jew's speech is holy. A Jew's speech has effect. So when a Jew says, Hayim, Achadas Hayim, when he says the night of the Omer, it has an effect to fix. Netzach shebechta begvura, it has an effect to fix that sphere of that night within his neshama. And of course, we have this in mind. That's why the Alte writes to have in mind the specific sphere and different other aspects that's written in the Siddur to have in mind when you're counting. The Ramban says that the entire period of Pesach, between Pesach and Shavuos, is viewed as one large Chol Hamoed. It's one large period of Chol Hamoed. Not Chol Hamoed in the sense of sleeping in late, but more in the sense of not in the sense of Motachim the whole time, not in that sense. But in the sense that it's there's still some spiritual leftovers shining from Shavuot, from Pesach, which is going to affect the entire 50-day period till Shavuos. And Shavuos is like this. Why is it called Atzeres? Shavuos is called Atzeres. And Lashon Chacham is it's like Shmini Atzeres of Sukkot. Just by Sukkot, it's mamish the next day, and by here we get a 43, 42-day break before it comes. Okay, so the mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer is a positive command in the Torah. Mitzvah sasim in the Torah. Sheva Shabbosos Tmimus Tiyanan, right? Sheva Shavuos Tisbu Lachem. We have to count 7 weeks. And it is debated amongst the Rishonim as to whether this mitzvah, even today in exile times, when we no longer have a temple, is of biblical or rabbinical status. The Rambam and others hold that it's of biblical status even today. So even today, fulfill the mitzvah in the Torah. While Tosfos and many other Rishonim hold that it's only rabbinical today. What's the basis of their debate? The basis of the debate is the understanding of what is the counting about. We all know that it's called Sefiras Ha-Omer. No one argues on that coinage of the term, due to the fact that we only start counting after the day that the Omer is offered in the temple. Now, the Omer was always offered 16th in the morning. And from there we learn, since it says Tmimus Tiyana, that the counting begins from the night before. So everyone agrees there's a scriptural relationship between the Omer sacrifice and the counting of the Omer. The question is, how strong is their bond? Are they dependent on each other or not? The Rambam holds it's true that there's a connection, but the mitzvah is independent. As the Ran explains, that the initial mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer began way before the temple and way before we got the mitzvah bringing the Omer. He says the mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer began when Bnei Yisrael initially left Mitzrayim. They were told in 52 days we're going to receive the Torah, and indeed that's what happened. They started counting up. Day 1, day 2, day 3, out of excitement. So the initial precedent of Sefiras Ha-Omer had nothing to do whatsoever with the Omer. Now that we have the Omer, according to Torah and Allah, it's dependent on the bringing of the Omer, meaning that's when we start counting. But not that if you don't bring the Omer, it turns into no longer a biblical mitzvah. That's the Rambam's position.
How do they call the Omer then before it was called, before it had to do with Omer, before?
So they obviously did not call it Sefiras Ha-Omer
Okay.
before the mitzvah of Omer
Okay,
was
there was a
applicable.
comment sometimes or something.
I can readily assume so. I've never spoken or interviewed anyone from that period, but I can readily assume that they did not call it Sefiras Ha-Omer. And that's a good point. When they come back, we'll have to, if they say, what'd you say? Sefiras what? Okay, so most of the Poskim, and this is how we rule, the Magen Avram, the Alte Rebbe, it's only rabbinical today. It's only Midivrei Sefer. Now, this is a very important introduction because based on that final arbitration that we rule it's only rabbinical, and we pretty much put the Rambam's opinion to the side, we have a lot of leniencies, a lot of halachas which we rule lenient in because we say it's only rabbinical. And in a rabbinical doubt, we always say it's okay. Safik d'Rabbanan l'kula, right? And we move leniently. In a few places we suspect for the Rambam, but in general that is the approach throughout the halachas Sefiras Ha-Omer, which would mean that if Mashiach comes tonight in Eretz Hashem, so everybody's going to be very happy, but I'm going to be just a little bit sad because this book's going to have to go to Geniza. As this entire book is based on the opinion that Sefiras Ha-Omer is rabbinical. And that's how we have all these leniencies. But the second it turns biblical again when Mashiach comes, then a lot of halachas are going to change. So that's already to know. You can't rely on this book once Mashiach comes. A new updated version has to be written, and that's regarding a lot of other subjects as well, by the way. It's not just this subject. Many other subjects are going to turn biblical, and many halachas are going to have to be updated. They're not going to be the same.
All 26 new books, Mashiach edition.
Mashiach edition. Already started now.
Oh, you guys, you have the smicha, you guys, the smicha would be involved in writing.
Yeah, okay. It's a shame. It's a shame. No, I was joking. I'm going to be very happy if he comes. Well, I can put he'll help me write it down.
Don't say L'Shem Yichud Kudsho B'Choshkim.
Yeah. The kind to fulfill the mitzvah d'Rabbanan.
So, but in the Siddur of the Spad,
Yeah, they say the kind mitzvah sasi ben
the
Torah.
not the Rabbanan.
It says, oh, let's see the nusach. Let's see the nusach. And bring the nusach. The kind mitzvah sasi. Yeah. It's definitely a mitzvah sasi d'Rabbanan at the very least. The question is in a mitzvah sasi d'Oraisa. Okay. We're going to continue. Say everyone agrees the origin is from the Torah. Everyone agrees that the origin is from the Torah. But they're not saying that we're having kavanah that it's from the Torah. Yeah. This is Nusach Sfarad. This is not Sfaradi. Being that we do rule it's rabbinical, it's forbidden. It's actually forbidden, min ha-Torah, to intend to fulfill the mitzvah d'Oraisa. That's Alte. Of course. Can I right now say Kriya Shema? Let's say it's, past the time of Zman Kriya Shema in the morning. Can I have in mind to fulfill the biblical mitzvah? Poskim, right? It's Alte.
It's very
the moment I'm explaining to you, the intent of a L'Shem Yichud is to say that this is the origin. We all agree it's the origin. What we're fulfilling today is in memory of the biblical mitzvah, and it's likened to the biblical mitzvah. We're not having in mind to fulfill the biblical mitzvah, because right now we can't fulfill the biblical mitzvah. Even those who want to hold by the Rambam, they still have to suspect the majority of Rishonim. And if they want, they can say, if it's a d'Oraisa, I'm having in mind to fulfill the d'Oraisa. If it's a d'Rabbanan, I'm having in mind to fulfill the d'Rabbanan. But to have in mind only to do a d'Oraisa, then it's about Alte.
It's the Psak of the Rambam.
Say that, but there's other opinions. The Rambam wasn't the only Jewish scholar. There's other majority Rishonim argue on the Rambam. And the Achronim rule not like the Rambam. That's the rule. The Achronim. Not like the Rambam. The Sephardim don't argue on this. Okay, moving along. we have the ability to fulfill 49 mitzvahs throughout Sefiras Ha-Omer, and even though we are aware that there is an opinion who holds, his name is the Bahag, that it's really one big mitzvah, and therefore if you miss the day, you're out. You're out of the ballgame. No longer, you can't count anymore if you miss the day. Nonetheless, even though there is such an opinion, as the Rebbe clarifies, he doesn't hold that it's one big mitzvah. He holds it's 49 steps of a mitzvah, meaning that every day it's a new mitzvah that's dependent on the previous day's mitzvah fulfillment. But no one says it's 49 versus 1. Everyone agrees there's 49 individual mitzvahs. The question is, can you still fulfill mitzvah of today if you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of yesterday? Is it a step-by-step program, 49-step program? So if you miss day 12, how are you going to go to day 13? You're out of the course. But until day 12, you were in the course. There's two different ways of understanding this opinion. Bottom line, the way the Rebbe clarifies it, which makes a lot of sense in halacha, is that it's 49 individual mitzvahs according to everybody. Who is obligated in this mitzvahs? As we know, of course, men are obligated. Regarding women, it is a major debate amongst the Rishonim. While majority of Rishonim hold that they are exempt, including the Rambam and the Chinuch, and that is how we rule, that women are exempt from Sefiras Ha-Omer. The Ramban was of the position that they are obligated, just like men in biblical times. They would be rabbinically obligated.
The books today.
What is the basis of their debate? The basis of their debate is, do we view Sefiras Ha-Omer as a time-dependent command, which sounds like it is, right? We only begin at the 16th of Nisan. Or do we view it as an Omer-dependent command? If you view it as an Omer-dependent command, then women should be obligated just like men. It has nothing to do. It's like if someone buys a house on Tuesday, and it's a woman, so she's not obligated in mezuzah because, hey, you only became obligated on Tuesday, you only bought the house today. That's silly. It happens to be that this is the time that the action fell on. It's the action that causes the mitzvah, not the time. So that's an argument the Ramban brings. It's the Omer that brings the mitzvah, not the Zman. Bottom line, as I said before, we rule that women are exempt from Sefiras Ha-Omer, and according to Kabbalah, women are not to say Sefiras Ha-Omer, and that is the minhag of some, especially Sephardim. However, others hold that not only is it mutter for women to say Sefiras Ha-Omer, and they can even do so with a blessing, but furthermore that they have accepted upon themselves to do this mitzvah as an obligation. So is the opinion of the Alte Rebbe and the Shulchan. That in some areas women have accepted this mitzvah as an obligation, and therefore, bottom line, the custom amongst many communities is for women to say Sefiras Ha-Omer, and many do so with a blessing, obviously following the same laws as men regarding if they missed a day. They don't have any extra. They don't have any extra leeway that they can go ahead and say a bracha. They don't have any extra leeway that they can go ahead and say a bracha if a man can't say a bracha, such as if they missed a day. But if they're still within the ability of a man's ability to say a bracha, they too can say a blessing. Some Ashkenazim, however, don't say a bracha, women, and the reason is because they suspect, for the Shulchan Shleima's opinion, brought in the Mishnah Brura, who holds that if you're not going to say all 49 days, then all the days are tainted. It's a questionable whether any of the days were good. But as I already explained, based on the Rebbe's clarification, that's not the true understanding of that approach, of that opinion of the Bahag, as he really agrees that there are 49 individual mitzvahs, and not that it's one mitzvah, that's one big mitzvah that's only completed on the 49th day. And based on that understanding, there's no reason for a woman to abstain from saying a blessing, even if she may miss one of the future nights. But nonetheless, that's the minhag of some Ashkenazim. The women say without a bracha. And regarding Sephardim, even though in general, many Sephardim, and so was the tradition in previous generations, did not follow the Mechaber's ruling, and they would say brachas on time-dependent commands that they are exempt from. Today, it's more in practice for Sephardi women not to say brachas, especially based on what we said before, based on Kabbalah, that this mitzvah is not shaykh to women, so therefore it's not customary for Sephardi women to say a bracha upon counting if they count. The Alte brings another very important reason why women are to count Sefiras Ha-Omer. Let's say a woman just heard about this now. So why don't you start counting? In case, the Alte says like this, that a person who doesn't count Sefiras Ha-Omer, including women, it's possible that they are not allowed to do malacha the entire night. So that means they can't do laundry, they can't sew, they can't do any time-consuming malacha. So in order for them to get out of this possible prohibition of not being allowed to do malacha, therefore they should count Omer, even if they've missed, even if they can't say a bracha. Meaning, irrelevant to the entire discussion we just had earlier, are they chayiv, did they accept upon themselves the mitzvah? There's an additional reason for them to say it, to get out of the problem of being prohibited malacha. Why do we not do malacha until we count Sefiras? That's the halacha. We don't do malacha until we count Sefiras. There's a few reasons recorded. One of the reasons is, and that's the reason Alte records, is because the pasuk says Shabbases, Tamimes. Shabbos is also from the wording of rest. So where do we rest? Where are we doing the rest by Sefiras Ha-Omer? Until you count. That's the rest. Until you count, we're doing a rest. So we don't do malacha until we count. So therefore, somebody who says, "Oh, I don't have time now to go to Marav and count Sefiras because I'm busy doing laundry," what are you saying? You can't do laundry until you count Sefiras. So you should go to Marav now and count Sefiras before you do laundry, not delay that because of laundry.
What time?
Starting from a half hour before. And before 19. Okay, the wording in the Alte Rebbe is from the time of sunset. So we'll have to differentiate in different types of work. Okay, here the wording is from sunset, from Shkia, not to do work. So bottom line to summarize, women are to count Sefiras Ha-Omer with or without a blessing based on their situation, but nonetheless they should always make sure to try to count Sefiras. Men should remind their spouses to count Sefiras every single night, and even if they're no longer, if they miss the day or they're not trying to fulfill the mitzvah, nonetheless for the other reasons we mentioned, they should go ahead and count. Regarding children, all children who have reached the age of chinuch should go ahead and are to be educated to count Sefiras with a bracha. Again, if they miss the night, then they should follow the same as men and not count with a blessing anymore. Now, what happens if a man missed one of the nights? He no longer counts with a blessing, but his wife is an Isha Tzadekis, and she's still counting with a bracha. Can he hear the bracha from her and be Yitzhak from her? The answer is no. The rule is that you can only be Yitzhak, a mitzvah, or bracha, from another person if you're both of equal level obligation. But according to the opinion, you're still obligated, and according to all opinions, she's not obligated, so you can't be Yitzhak from her. However, there is one case where a person is Yitzhak from a woman and enters into problems, and that's regarding other women. Let's say there's a few women in a home. One of them gets up, she's reason magdim in the mitzvahs. She gets up from dinner and she says right away Sefiras Ha-Omer. And of course, she wants to say it out loud. She says it out loud for everybody to hear. Etc. So all those women right now can no longer count with a bracha, unless they had in mind to not be Yitzhak with her. If they didn't explicitly have in mind to not be Yitzhak, they were just, so to say, Yitzhak with this woman. So they can't count with a bracha. Therefore, the best thing is for everyone to keep their Sefiras counting to themselves and not enter people into problems, unless you were asked to be a shliach to count on behalf of someone else that they want to hear you. But otherwise, it just enters us into problems. And we mentioned this before in previous classes, but this is a famous ruling of the Alte Rebbe that goes into many other cases. And this is the explanation of why, according to Chabad custom, we are not traditionally accustomed to say blessings out loud in public forums in order not to mess other people up. So therefore, by Fabregan's Rebbe, we never saw the Rebbe say, as many other Rabbanim do and people do, to be Mizaki Yidin in the answering of Amen. Not to say there's no source or inyan in such a practice, but that's not our practice, and we specifically don't do that. And the reason is because if someone was about to say Hamaitzi, and now you went ahead and said Hamaitzi, then they can no longer say Hamaitzi, unless they had in mind not to be Yitzhak. So in order to avoid this balagan, people ending up saying possible brachas batalas, therefore we just keep our blessings to ourselves, or you can do a compromise and say only part of the blessing out loud. Don't say Baruch Atah Hashem out loud, only say the rest of it. So they can answer Amen, but they're not yet because they didn't hear it.
Now, two questions.
So also with Sefiras Ha-Omer, the woman can say, so say Hayom quietly. Chadus Hayom La'omer. The person wasn't Yetzer, didn't hear the word Hayom. Hayom is a necessary component of Sefiras Ha-Omer.
The women in that group there that are all of a sudden in trouble because the woman said, "Wow, they can do the same thing you told us a man can do, that they can say for the whole time."
Yes, absolutely. We've mentioned a few times. You can stipulate in your thought process, in your mind, that you are intending now and forever to never be Yetzer with anyone ever. That's Sefiras Ha-Omer, unless you decide otherwise. So yes, everyone can do it.
Speaking of a lifetime.
Yeah, sure.
Never in my whole lifetime am I going to be.
Well, so the Poskim right to do once a year. To have once a year renewal. Once a year renewal. An annual renewal. But yeah.
You have to say it out loud.
No, even in your thought, it's
not in front of anybody.
No. You don't need witnesses. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need any of that. And this problem, of course, it's not just by women, it's by men as well. If you're passing by an early minion from Erev and you overheard them saying Sefiras Ha-Omer, if you didn't have in mind or never made this stipulation to not be Yetzer, you're in trouble. What do you mean you're in trouble? You can't say the bracha, that's all. Don't try to be machmir to say the bracha, it's no good. Either hear the bracha from someone else or count without a bracha. Because Safik brachas lahakil, brachas in ma'akvis, the brachas don't invalidate the mitzvah in any which way. I mentioned. Oh, absolutely. No one here is considering that maybe you're not Yetzer Sefira. On the contrary, maybe you were already Yetzer Sefira. Maybe you're already fulfilled it because you heard from somebody else already. And maybe if you hearing Sefira is like counting it. That's the debate. So since you already heard it and you didn't have in mind to exclude yourself, therefore you suspect for both approaches. So on the one hand, I'm going to recount because maybe I'm not Yetzer someone else. On the other hand, I'm not going to say a blessing, so maybe I was. But either way, if you recount, you can count the next day. And also, this would be beneficial in the opposite case. If I heard someone else counting Sefira, let's go back to our table of women. So 4 women were talking. One tzaddikus got up and said the bracha and said Sefira, and everyone else said, no, we're going to be Yetzer later on. We're not saying right now, we're in the middle of a juicy conversation. And they forgot. And now it's the next day, and they asked, can I continue saying a bracha? The answer is, if you didn't have in mind to not be Yetzer with her, then you can. Then you can say a bracha, because you heard her say the Sefira. The bracha, yeah.
To be Yetzer from a bracha of someone else, the person who is saying the bracha has to think and not to.
Only by biblical, not by rabbinical. Yeah. That's the chiddush of the Alte Rebbe, that by rabbinical bracha, rabbinical mitzvah, even if there's no kavana even if there's no offensive kavana, I mean, there's no kavana of the offense to be Yetzer, but there wasn't kavana of the defense to not be Yetzer, you're still Yetzer. That's the issue. You have to have negative intent. It's not enough to not have positive intent. You have to have negative intent.
So for the Hallel,
Was the
Hallel, let's say, we have to.
Correct, absolutely. I do this every single Rosh Chodesh. And either I have in mind beforehand to not be Yetzer with the Chazan. No, the Chazan shouldn't play games, because the Chazan may need to be Yetzer. Many people don't say the bracha of Hallel, and they're depending on the Chazan. So the Chazan shouldn't Chas v'Shalom not have in mind to not be Yetzer. He has to have in mind to be Yetzer. Yes, but other people, the listeners, so if they plan on saying a bracha after the Chazan, they have to have in mind, I'm having in mind to not be Yetzer with his bracha, absolutely. Or to say the bracha beforehand. That's also sometimes you can do. Start the bracha with him. Yeah.
What's the latest time I could make
a Okay, that's our next point. When?
By the way, whether man or woman, if you blew it, you didn't say the bracha for a whole 24-hour period, now you don't need the rest of the time without bracha. If you let 3 days go by of not saying any counting and then start up again without a bracha, now you're not a bracha.
Yeah, if we hold of the opinion that the mitzvah is day independent, every day it's its own, independent of the previous days, then it makes no difference how many days. Even if you woke up, even if you were chazer b'tshuva on day 49, you should say Sefiras Ha-Omer. You have an obligation to say Sefiras Ha-Omer. It's not, you're not a woman. A woman is exempt. A man has an absolute rabbinical or biblical obligation according to the Rambam. Right? Okay, regarding the timing. So, historically, the reason why we we recite Sefiras Ha-Omer specifically by day, as you can say, if it's dependent on the Omer, when was the Omer offered? Daytime. You can't offer sacrifices at night. Nothing was offered at night. Nighttime temple Avodah was closed. So it was done by day. So why don't we also only count Sefiras by day? Why do we rule the opposite? You can only count at 9 and by day. It's an iffy. It's a doubt. The reason is because the Torah says Tamimis. And it's only Tamim if you have a full 24 hours. So it can't mean that we start counting from the morning of the 16th. It must be the night before. So therefore we start counting from the night of the 16th. And in order for it to be Tamimis, you have to count before Alois HaShachar, and that answers your question. You have B'di'evid until Alois HaShachar to count Sefiras Ha-Omer. Now if you pass the Alte Rebbe's Alois and you're before the Magen Avram's Alois, so you're entering into Sefiras, entering into problems. But nonetheless, count, nonetheless. So you have nothing to lose. You should count, even during the day you should count if you forgot. But you have until Alois HaShachar, until daybreak. Now, that is all B'di'evid. Lichat Chila, it's a mitzvah min ha-mufchar to count every night immediately at Tzeitzek Yichad, meaning daven Ma'ariv on time, as is always the halach in Shulchan Aruch, chapter 235 in Aruch, to daven Ma'ariv and Kriya Shema of the nighttime right away at Tzeitzek Yichad, fill the mitzvah right away, and then say Sefiras Ha-Omer right away. And the reason for this is not just for the idea of what we said before, you ask malach until then, you can't eat until then, there's all these regulations until you count Sefiras. It's not just to get rid of those regulations, but it's rather due to the essential mitzvah of Sefiras Ha-Omer of Tamima is that it's meant to cover the entire 24 hours. So b'di'evid, you can say, so long as you got it in before daybreak, it's still considered as if it's counting the whole day. But ideally, it should be counted as soon as it's nighttime, and then you really can cover the entire 24 hours. So that's the reason why, especially during Sefiras Ha-Omer, one should try to daven with a minyan that davens bazman, at the time of Tzeitzek Yichad. Counting during Bein HaShemashos. You have a lot of minyanim till today, as was custom back then, to daven Ma'ariv early. Back in the day, almost all the Ashkenazi communities davened an early Ma'ariv. They used to daven Ma'ariv sometimes by Plaga Mincha, and other times they would daven by Bein HaShemashos, but before Tzeitzek Yichad. So can you count? Does the count if you counted them? And the answer. This is where we're going to have a little difference between pre-temple and post-temple time. I'm sorry, between temple time and pre-temple time. In pre-temple time today, since Sefiras Ha-Omer is only rabbinical as the final ruling is, the ruling is Safek D'Rabbanan L'Haka. So what is twilight period in the law? It's a doubt. Maybe it's day, maybe it's night. So a person who counted Bein HaShemashos is Yaitse. And then is Yaitse. So therefore, when a person who counts Bein HaShemashos is the Yaitse, but that's not the best thing to enter yourself into doubts. Therefore, the best thing is for them to count specifically at night. Wait till Tzeitzek Yichad to count. However, when Mashiach comes and it's going to become Deraisa again, and Safek Deraisa L'Chumra, and you cannot count. So one thing's for certain, it's a very not nice thing to daven a Bein HaShemashos Ma'ariv minyan during Sefira period by the Rambam's Kever and count Sefira. Because the Rambam holds his Deraisa. Do it in a different place. Go to a different shul. By the Rambam to do that, to do such a thing. I once told it to the minyan. I didn't understand what I wanted from them. Yeah, same idea. No, I'm sorry. Before Bein HaShemashos Plaga Mincha, the halach is that you're not Yaitse. If a person counted, then we say you shouldn't count again with the bracha because we're chayshish. But ideally, we hold that Plaga Mincha doesn't count. It's not considered nighttime regarding the counting Sefira. But with Bein HaShemashos and Mikra Din, it's good. Regarding counting before Ma'ariv, let's say you came to shul late, they're already up to Sefiras Ha-Omer, to count with the minyan and then daven Ma'ariv, or to just start davening Ma'ariv and miss everything with the minyan. So there's two ways to go about this. Some places can argue that it's better to precede Ma'ariv before Sefira, and others say no, it's actually better in this situation to precede, even though in general it's a mitzvah to say Sefiras Ha-Omer after Ma'ariv. In this situation, in order to have the advantage saying with a minyan, it's better, and practically that's what's advisable, as quite often if you're davening alone, you come to forget about it altogether. So now you remember, now you have an opportunity to say it with the minyan, and hopefully you'll forget to say it when you're done Ma'ariv. Regarding eating, so we mentioned before that you can't eat before Sefiras Ha-Omer. The halacha is that one has to abstain from eating a meal, which means bread, washing on bread, or eating more than a kibetz of 55 grams of mazainus foods, or consuming more than 55 milliliters of an alcoholic beverage, starting from a half hour prior to sunset. Okay, that is when that time begins. So anyone who usually has dinners at the 7 o'clock-ish zone, they're in a little bit of trouble during Sefiras Ha-Omer period, unless you don't wash on bread and aren't having 55 grams of mazainus during this time. But if you are, then you're entering into the problematic time. All right, Shkin now 7:22, so starting already 6:52, you already can't set a meal. Now, does it help to have a shayim? A reminder. I'll have someone remind me. Or I have a set minyan. I daven every night. Does that help? Ma'ariv we're talking about. So, while definitely regarding Ma'ariv and Mincha, the widespread minhag is to rely on a shayim. And that's why we don't abstain from having a meal necessarily today before Ma'ariv and before Mincha. Right? Because we rely on the fact that either we have a set minyan we daven in every day, and that's considered like a reminder, having a schedule. It's like an inbuilt reminder, or you have someone to remind you, you put it on your phone to remind you, whatever it is that you did as a reminder. So we rely on that. Over regarding Sefiras Ha-Omer, the implication of the Poskim is that a shamer does not help. It only helps during the half-hour time. So during that half hour till 7:22, yes, you can have a shamer, you can put it on your phone to remind you. But once it's 7:22, once it's shkia, from the implication of the Poskim is that a shamer no longer helps. Some argue, some say it does even in such a case, but that is the simple understanding of the Shulchan Aruch. If he started eating, and if he started beheter before the half hour before, if he started beheter before the half hour, then it is okay, he can continue. If he started after sunset, then it's no good, he has to stop. Okay, Sefiras Ha-Omer lechatchila must be recited in a standing position. We learn this from the word bekama, which is said regarding the counting, which means we're starting regarding the Omer, which means standing. So therefore, we also stand during the time. Regarding the language, so you do not have to count in Lashon HaKodesh. You can count in Lashon HaKodesh, which is what we do, but you do have to count in the language you understand and comprehend. So anyone who doesn't understand the words he is reading in Hebrew, it is worthless. It's not considered a count. The count does not count. In order for it to count and be valid, you have to understand the words you're saying. So those who don't understand Lashon HaKodesh should count in whatever language they do know, and with a blessing. That's not a problem. You're fulfilling the same exact mitzvah.
I mean, for the numbers themselves.
For
the numbers.
Yes.
Only the numbers.
The numbers, yes, absolutely. That's the main mitzvah, so we're saying.
You're talking about the bracha?
The bracha you can also say in English, but the bracha you're yetze if you don't understand.
Oh.
But this counting, you're not yetze. You're not yetze the counting unless you understand what you are saying in the counting.
Does the counting include saying what the Sefiras is? Is that?
What do you mean? Oh, the Netzach Shabbat. No, that's a Kabbalistic addition. That's doesn't follow these laws. Okay, we've run out of time. We still have a lot left, and we still have some copies left. Get it now before Mashiach comes. Okay, hurry up.
Well, that somewhat depends on how much faith you have.
You have to edit them. Otherwise, we have holding up the shit. You look for clothes next time. Clothes.
Clothing, yes, we'll have to do that next week. Because everybody, Gesundte Zuma, a healthy summer. It's much to buy clothing, unless you have a family custom not to do so. A lot of people get confused between 3 weeks and Sefiras Ha-Omer. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of trade-offs. It's mutter to buy clothing. It's a different story.